Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So, we're going to be carrying on with the little Mark II Escort build. We got the front and rear, what are kind of the bulkheads, and we're going to be building the centre of the chassis. So, let's get you a closer look, see how we get on with this. Right, so, moving on, we're going to need B10, B11, B9, B8, and 16 of these little screws. So let's have a look what it's telling us to do first. So it does look like we're going to overlap these together first. So if we start with B11 and B9, so we're going to get these fastened together first off. And this looks like it's going to be one hell of a sturdy car when it's built. So we've got two screws in the centre first. That looks like we've got that side finished. So then we need to move on to this one. So this is B10 and B8. And again, it looks like we're going for these two centre screws. So it looks like that is them two, and then we've got them two. Then it looks like it's asking us to place this together. So it does lock together quite well. And then we've got two more screws in the front and two in the back. And these are all the same size screw. So we'll get all four of these screwed in. And for this one, you will be following the 239mm long wheelbase. So, it looks like we've got that in place. Then it's telling us we need 4 of the little white sort of bearings, but in the bearing kit, so although we've got 4 bearings, we've got 2 that have got sort of little skirts on them, and it doesn't actually say anywhere which position on this shaft they're going to need to be in. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But we do need that, 4 bearings. We need the 2 little drive pins. They're going to go through the end drive shaft. Then we need 2 gears. And again, you just want to make sure that you've got nothing rough stuck out on the end of these where you snap them off the parts tree. Then we need 4 of the B2 parts. Now they're the tiny little shims, so be very careful when you snap these off the parts tree. I think it'd be really easy to destroy these. Now what I'm not certain of, with these bearings having the little skirt on them, there's nothing that tells you what position it needs to go in, and I'm not sure if it actually replaces this little shim. So I don't know if that bearing doesn't actually require the shim behind it. And it looks like the overall width of them is identical. So we come to building the drive shaft. So after going through it, the order it shows you to build this in doesn't actually work when you're using bearings. So what we actually need is 1 bearing with the skirt on facing backwards. Then you need the pin, and I've already put plenty of grease on all these, so I don't need to put any more on. then you need the gear, then we need a skirt facing outwards, so the little B2 sort of shim skirts. And then if we take one of the cases that it's going to sit in and we sit these in, it looks like the drive shaft sits in perfect there, but there is definitely no room to put the skirt on that side of it. So would the skirt fit on the other side? Let's have a look. So if we take that bearing off and we put one of them shims in, and then we put the bearing back in with the skirt facing towards the actual gear, so just a reverse of what we've got on the other side. Let's see how that fits. Now that actually seems to take quite a lot of play out. Certainly a strange design, but with the skirt facing outwards it should run on the bearing race, which I'm guessing that's what these are designed to do. So if we try and replicate that on the other side, we need a bearing with the flared skirt on it. Then we need a little shim with the flare facing what will be the gear side. Then we need to get a drive pin. Then we're going to need a gear. Then we're going to need a shim that's facing us bearing. Then we're going to need us bearing. Right, let's jump back to this one. So it says, so we have it that way round for the front. We have the rear that way round with the post mounts facing forward, and then we have that space in the middle, and it looks like that should push on and then onto there. Surprisingly long, this chassis. I think my initial thoughts with it being a Mark II Escort was that it were going to be shorter. So we've got 2 screw holes towards the front, 2 screw holes towards the back. So I'm going to start with these and just get the screws into place and then start tightening them down. Now flip it round and you've got 4 screws on this side. So we'll get all them into place. So if we go to lay this on the actual RC, it does look like the drive shaft drops into place really nicely. So let's get us grease on his gears and try and pack a bit of grease into where the pin sits. So once we've got that all in place, we're then get it the right way around. We're going to need our A6 covers, and these should sit into place quite nicely on the front and rear. Then we're going to need 4 of our BA6 screws. So we're going to want 1 in each of these. Certainly got a lot of strength to it. So we now have our drive shaft, and it does feel really nice and smooth. Right, so we want 4 BA6s, 2 of the little turnbuckles, and then we're going to need 4 of the caps. Then onto our C parts, C19 and C11. That's that weird looking bit, and it's warning us not to over tighten these. So we've got 2 lots of these, so C11, C19. So looks like we're building one that way round, and then the other side you want the opening facing away, and then we screw them both from that side. And it does warn you not to over tighten these. They do feel quite rubberized, so they should stand up well. Right, so that should be as arms assembled. So we've got 2 of them, tells you to note the direction. Then we've got to build 2 sets of the turnbuckles, and the measurement for this is 6mm. So that's one measuring 6mm gap. See if we got them same. Yep. So next we need 2 of these, and they are the longest ones. It looks like it's telling you to grease these. So the main bit you want to make sure you get is the center of them. Then we're going to get that facing us, and it's showing us that these should face the rear. So looks like they're going in that orientation. So if you get that lined up to start with, should be able to get it in position. So we spin that in and then screw it down. And that feels quite free. So again, get that into position. I just like to screw them around a little as you put them in, and it spreads the grease around inside. So that is our rear arms, or rear lower arms, fitted. Next we're going to move on to the shocks. So we need 2 springs. Then we're going to need a shock assembly. So we want C15, so we're going to need 2 of them. We're going to need 2 C7s, 2 C6s, and these should be quite easy to build because they're not oil filled, so we ain't going to mess around filling them with shock oil. 2 C5s. Again, I'd just go pretty steady taking these off because they're quite thin, and I think it'd be easy to tear them, but you're probably better off twisting these off. And then 2 C12s. I do find these C parts easier to twist off, and then if you do have anything overhanging or left on, you can just quickly tidy it up with Stanley knife. Just gives you a better finish on the RC when it's all together and you got no sharp edges sticking out from where you remove them from the tree. So let's see what order these go together in. Bit of a strange design. So it looks like we need a C15, a C6, then it looks like we've got one of the spacers, and then that with the little skirt to the bottom. It seems to be showing it that way. It does actually hold together quite well. And then you put the spring on. Then we put C12 in to the side, and then you push it in and turn it. That has got to be one of the easiest shocks I have ever built. I must admit, it's fair enough, it's not a damped shock, but that is a damn quick shock to build up. So you just put them together and then twist it so they both line up, and it holds itself in. That's quite impressive. So now we're going to need 4 of the shock screws. So this again, it's telling you to apply grease if they're tight. So it looks like we need A11 for the top of the shocks. So you're looking at the 2 inner ones, A11 for the top and A10 for the base. We're going to need shocked at top, then that through, and then A11, which is the shorter ones. And we need to get that lined up and screw it in. And these would be a nice easy upgrade to upgrade the actual handling of the RC. So if you swap these for damped shocks, you're definitely going to get a quick and noticeable upgrade. So the wider shims are going to go to the bottom. So if we put the screw through, then the wider shim doesn't actually show you whether you put the tapered side towards the shock or not. So I'm going to put it towards the rear arm. And they're quite an aggressive shock position on these, sort of straight up and down. And if you put the taper towards the shock body itself, the wide end lines up perfect with the shock arm. That's quite a nice feel for a non-damped shock. So we'll do the same this way around. And I do find the Tamiya cars, like, they're a curious little thing to build. They can be quite infuriating sometimes when the instructions don't really tell you or show you easily enough where something goes. I can certainly understand where the stress comes into it with them. Right, so we need 3 more of the little black screws. Then we've got a bag with our little O-rings in. So it's telling us we need 2 of these, and then 2 gearbox joints. So on these, it's telling us to pop one of the little O-rings inside and then poke it down. We want it dog bones, so we'll get that done on both these first. Then it's telling you to grease this bit, but I don't think we need to on these. I'm just going to put a tiny bit on it because we are running full bearing kit on this one. So you should be able to drop them in place and they should hold in quite good. And you know you've got them in right if you spin your drive shaft and they spin round. So just make sure they sat all the way in. Then it looks like we need C10 and 2 C9. C10 looks like an aerial straw. So looks like we have that facing away from us. So C10 fastens onto C9. And then we have that facing forward. So we're going to have one of them fastened on the left hand side. Just be careful when you're tightening these up because they are the C components and they're like rubberized. Then we need this one facing forward as well. Quite a sturdy body mount. Right, so another part where you're going to have to choose high or low build. So we're going to go with high. So it looks like what we'll be doing is 24, 25. And then if you're building the low part, you'd go 24, 25, and then you're on to bag D. So we're going to go there, there, and then skip to that. So let's see what parts we need for this. So we're going to be looking at 2 of the little black screws, 2 brass inserts. We're going to swap us 2 bearings for 2 ball bearings. We're going to need 2 more of the little black O-rings. We're going to need 2 of these output shafts. So it looks like we're building steering, and we're going to have to build 2 of these. So we need F parts. So 5, it looks like that's going to be the left. 6 is going to be the right, and then we need B parts. So B13 is going to the left, and B12 is going right. So let's make sure we've got no sharp edges on these. Right, so let's start with the left one. It looks like what it's showing us to do is fasten that onto there, and we're going to use 1 screw, and it looks like you go for the top one, top hole. So we want that looking like that, and then the brass insert, it says put in the top hole. Again, this is one of them where I think, why didn't you just show it as the other way around, and then you could have actually seen what you're doing. And you can probably tell how many Tamiya kits and other random kits I've built with the amount of these little sort of tools that I've got kicking about. So that's the left one built. Let's move on to the right. So we want that one facing that way. Then we want that to sit on top. Again, it's showing us we want a black screw in the top. Not really sure why we're not using 2 screws. Maybe something else mounts through that. Then we're going to want our little brass insert screwed in. So that's got the brass insert. Then we can drop a bearing in, and we can drop a bearing in this one. So we need our little black O-rings again, and you just need to drop it down, make sure it's sat properly, and these just cushion the end of drive shafts really, stop them rattling around. Some RCs have them and some don't, but you want them right down into base. And again, it's telling us to grease these, but I'm only going to put a slight bit on because we're running in bearings, so it shouldn't be an issue. But it'll not do any harm. So we can drop that in. That's got these into place. Now we're going to need 2 drive pins, 2 drive shafts, and then we're going to get the RC and its turners. We need to grease the end of these and put a bit of grease in these. So we'll start with the left one. Its turners to do it in the lowest position. So we'll put a bit of grease in. Oh, sorry, should I say the highest position? So we want a bit of grease on end of each drive shaft, Then we're going to drop our drive shaft into place. These do seem tiny, but it's not telling us to grease this because we've already got the grease inside it. Now I'm looking at it thinking, if we were to move that up, would that not give it a high center, a higher ground clearance? Definitely seems like it would. It says build it to the high one, so I suppose you can always change it if you want to at a later date. Then we've got to pop one of these on. So we can move around to this side and get this other one in place. I wonder if you can get these drive shafts in with pin in place. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like you can. So I'd certainly do it that way. That way's easier. Get your pin somewhere near and then drop your drive shaft in. So we now have working suspension. Put any excess grease on your screw heads and it'll stop them rusting. So that is as good a place as any to leave it, because we've got the rear suspension all built up and most of the chassis together. So let's wrap this one up. Right, so there we have it. Fully working rear suspension, and as I say, it's looking bigger than I expected it to be for a Mark II Escort. Although it does say build it to the 239 and it says follow the ones for high. So it's built to spec. But hopefully you're enjoying this. But thanks again for watching Wtf Rc Cars. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Share to friends and family. And again, give a shout out to RD Models Chesterfield. That's where we got this kit from. Nice guys. So have a look at the online shop. I'll leave the links in the description below. And catch you guys again next time.